Thank you for coming to the panel today on how to find and hire a developer. My name is Espree Devora. I'm a reporter for Tech Zulu, and I just launched the company thanks to Damien's help right here. He's a startup attorney, SaveBusinessTime.com. I'm really excited. In my experience, I've had to do a lot of hiring and firing and finding and all sorts of stuff, so I have amazing people on this panel about how to hire a developer, find a developer, so you guys don't have to worry about that anymore. Now, anybody who knows me knows that I'm adamant about having actionable panels that you can walk away and be able to implement the tips, so I want to make sure there's not so much storytelling, there's more like, how do I leave and know how to do something? So first, who here, raise your hands, is trying to find a developer and hire one right now? And who here is a developer?
So we're already done. Hang out.
So raise your hand again if you're a developer.
And are working?
The developers in the room who are interested in helping people, when the panel ends, can you just step outside for a second to make sure people can find you? Everybody take a look around the room to the developers holding their hand in the air still. Okay? If you need help, they're your developers. Alright, so what I'm going to start with is some people don't know the difference between how do you build software. Oh, well, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourselves first, just in case. Sorry. Yes.
Hi, I'm John Scheipel, freelance CTO. In 20 years, I've built over 40 companies and products, one of them being the pop-up ad on the internet.
Thanks a lot.
Nicely done.
And he's a nice guy, he's not spammy.
It was bound to happen. I was just a vehicle for a higher power.
John's a bit spammy. My name is Scott Lee. I'm the CEO of Smilo Incorporated. I guess I'm on this panel because I hired 32 developers to work for me for free, and we are in the middle of our seed round right now and launching our product closed beta in Dubai in 3 weeks. Before coming to Smilo, I was the head of recruitment for Riot Games, where I scaled that team from 40 to 300 and led to a $500 million exit. And before then, I was an HR consultant that worked with some of the top game studios in the world, like Naughty Dog, Sucker Punch, and Double Fine Productions, and building their teams to get to exit.
I worked at Naughty Dog when there were 3 people.
Oh yeah, with Bob?
No.
Before Bob.
Yeah.
Pre-Bob.
Matt.
Jason and the other guy.
My name is Matthew Pierce. I'm VP of Strategy at a company called Originate. We actually have 80 developers on staff that instead of putting money into startups, we actually invest engineering talent. So offices in LA, San Francisco, Hangzhou, China, Sweden, New York, and Las Vegas. And we've got a whole bunch of companies in our portfolio that run on engineering talent. Prior to that, many years ago, I started a company and hired a whole bunch of engineers and exited and moved to LA, and it's been awesome.
Janine Davis, I'm one of the co-founders of Recruiting. The other one's back there hiding, the tall guy. So we just do tech recruiting in LA for startups and high-growth companies. So all I do is find developers every day, every second of every day. And then before this, I used to be in tech, so I used to code many moons ago, and that's how I get the basic logic stuff. So it helps.
So since we're short on time, because I know everything's going behind, I want to actually start with, if any of you guys have any questions, raise your hand and let's take a couple questions to start with. And don't be shy. This is your chance to get, really top quality advice.
How did you get that many developers to work for free, and how did you vet their skills? The second part was how do you vet their skills, especially because developers working for free, you pay what you get for.
Sure. I use this thing called chloroform. And it's a bit of a snowball effect. I think the hardest thing you do when you are hiring developers for free is you are convincing them to put their lives in your hands, and you better believe in your product. One thing I'm very good at is being very, very passionate. But the team that I built were people that started off people I worked with at former studios and former development companies, and I knew that they were top-notch guys. I knew that they were A's. I let them hire the people around them. At the same time, I started being very, very creative around colleges like Harvey Mudd and Caltech and Stanford, and started just reaching out to my past network. You are not going to get everyone to join your team, but if you can reach out to the 3,000 best developers in America, 32 really isn't that hard to find.
Do we have another question?
They're not all free.
Well, yeah, I don't. That's very difficult to pull off. I don't think that's a common normal story.
Well, it's not. Well, yes, I've never heard that story except my own.
Right, and the basic gist of it, in my
And thank you for the honesty. Yeah.
the words I use is trust. Like, how do you establish like a trust relationship? Because the fact is, every developer you'll meet, they've heard it before, especially if you don't have resources. The joke I like to tell is, what does this mean? Revolutionary startup seeks ... It means you have no money. I mean, and no resources. And there's nothing wrong with that per se. It's just, it's a different mode of interacting. You can't snow somebody with your hype because they'll detect it. You have to be genuine and interesting. And if you don't like what you're making, like, A, why are you making it? But Scott here is very passionate about what he does, and so it comes forth. So, there's definitely an art to it.
Yeah, I think that you have to know what you want, and if I'm assuming a lot of people in this room right now are quote-unquote entrepreneurs who are trying to build a product and have no idea how to build the infrastructure behind that product.
Let's not assume. How many people in here are entrepreneurs trying to build a product right now?
And have no idea.
How many people are entrepreneurs in this room right now and know the difference between C# and Java?
What's the difference? They're the same.
They're essentially the same, yeah. But like, if you don't know the difference and you go out there looking for that magic, it's like, oh, I need this CTO, and you look for the right experience, you're not going to find that. And if you go to the same meetup.com events that everyone else goes to, then you're exactly what John says you're doing. You're going with the crowd, and you're not going to get the guys that you want. The people that you need are your friends and family first. And slowly but surely, you're going to get to the developers that you want to get to because you have that trust with them. They're your friends. My first 6 developers were my best friends at Riot Games and Heavy Iron Studios and Obsidian Entertainment. And they were guys that I knew were some of the smartest people in the world. They were all smarter than me. And I empower them to be smarter than me and make these decisions on this huge challenge, on this huge platform that no one else is doing. And that's why they joined on. And they joined on for less than 5% of the company, obviously, because there's so many of them. So if you can give that to them, if you believe in your product and it makes sense, and everyone around you has that infectious enthusiasm, then yeah, finding 32 developers is not hard. If you're just making a product, then yeah, it's really hard.
To second that, how many people here have heard of Box.net? Are you guys familiar with it? It's a huge company, like multi-million dollars. The CTO, is it still the CTO? This is my best friend. She's helping us videotape. Her cousin was one of the original founding members of Box.net, a developer. And the way I had my first developer, her cousin, is by calling my best friend in college saying, I need a developer, do you know anyone? And he was in USC at the time, and he did work for me for free. So you're so right about going to your network that you think, I mean, she's not a developer, how would I know that she knew someone, but just reaching out and finding someone.
I do think, though, that leads to sort of the second problem behind recruiting, right? It's not just how do you get the right people, it's how do you keep the right people.
Or get rid of them.
Which is a third problem, right? They all revolve around, like, how good is your team? How do you create the best possible team? Recruiting is certainly a huge piece of that. Passion is a big piece of that. Working on the right projects is a big piece of that. But then these second tier problems become very, very important as you build products going forward. It's how do we get rid of the people that don't need to be there, and how do we keep the ones that do? How do we create incentive structures such that we can keep the best engineers?
But I mean, to speak to that, I mean, take it a step back. Mm-hmm. If we're not technical, is everybody here technical? Some of us don't know development at all. How do you monitor if they're even doing good work at all? Do you need a project manager? How do you protect yourself?
So, well, first use your gut. Like, I've talked to a ton of people who are like, I've had this guy for 6 months, and he tells me to my face he doesn't believe in the product. Instantly get rid of him. And I don't mean to be negative, but just because you have someone and you waited 3 months, 6 months, or 9 months, you still have to, be on top of them and run it like a company. I had one of my clients went 8 months of never launching. That, in my world, if they fail more than 1 week, something's wrong.
No, but you're a technical person, so you can look at code and know if they're doing a good job or not. What about people like me? I'm not a developer. How do I know that this person who's working for equity, who seems to be really passionate about what I'm doing, how do I know that they're even building something quality that doesn't, have breaks and can't get hacked and all this stuff?
You have to get help.
John.
Well, no, you have to get help.
Like that.
You do have to get help.
So
and how much does that help
Well, so
cost?
first of all, your gut's probably right. Now the problem is you don't know what your gut's saying. You may be over late and that's why I'm tense, or maybe this guy's an idiot and he really can't do what I want. So partially it's getting better at tuning your gut, and then you should use your network and find techies. You know, could you talk to these, you know, look at these 3 resumes for me, not 30, not 300. If it's 30 or 300, you probably have to compensate them in some way. And techies, first thing off the table is equity. So for free, you know, don't just with your friends, hey, I'll give you equity. They're like I would have done it for free. Now you're making it kind of odd. So there's a stepped process where ask your friends, you know, you have to respect their time, and then maybe you get some part-time help, maybe you get a full-time CTO, but there are ways in your network to get that help. And I know guys who are like, techies, I don't want to work for free, but if you're my friend, I'll look at like 5 or 10 resumes. If you buy me breakfast, sure, I'll interview that guy for you. I mean, it's not a big deal if it's a friend. If you're doing it like 100 times, that's a different story.
So step 1 is you do need someone within your network who can review resumes. Now you found a developer and we either can afford to pay him or they are so passionate about it, they have agreed to work on equity. How do we manage the code so that we know they're building a good product?
You can also run, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to approach this, right? Like you can also hire a reputable shop. I mean, it's not just finding guys that you know. I mean, sometimes the reality of this industry is there's a fair amount of outsourcing. And,
especially in LA.
And there's a lot of it in LA, and I work for a company that has 80 engineers on staff, and so there's this 2-tiered piece for me. It's how do I hire the best guys in to originate, right? And the answer to that is we have excellent people who I trust. It goes back to this issue of trust. We hire excellent people who I trust to vet those people, and there are tests and there are, you know, projects, and we work them in, and we get really, really grade A guys who have been vetted by other institutions too, and then we build sort of incentive structures around them to keep them. And then the question to an entrepreneur, question to somebody who is looking to hire engineers, you know, how do you go find good guys? Well, you can reach out to your network. You can find engineers that have worked at reputable shops, or you can go to an originate and know that the guys that are there are top-notch guys because they've produced good work in the past, and you can see the work and you can test it.
But Matthew, what if like I have no budget at all? Like I have no money, like I'm straight out of college or I'm a waitress, and my dream is to build a company. How do I hire someone to build?
You can't. So here's a question. Okay, I get people coming all the time, I need a developer. And I say, do you need a developer or a partner? What's the difference? You pay developers. Oh, if I have limited resources, I can't necessarily pay. I want to compensate in largely equity. That's a partner. That's not a developer. That's a different discussion.
Right. So it's about shifting our mindsets to think: are we hiring a partner or a founding team member, or are we hiring an employee? So and you're saying if we're looking to hire an employee now, is intern out of the scope? Because the internship giving someone why wouldn't you?
Yeah. The reason I say it is just because especially if you're building something that's web-based and you've got to scale it. If you have somebody that is an intern, they're not going to have enough experience. You're never going to have the experience doing that before, and you just need somebody. So that's what I'm saying. You know, I see all these clients doing this a lot of the time. They either hire a CTO in-house, they hire John or somebody like John. That can be, so they might have interns and developers, and a lot of times they use both of us. You know, so we'll place the developers, but then they've got a CTO for hire in-house. Just making sure the architecture is right, because it'll break.
I was going to say there might be one other piece to that.
Or
I don't want to make
something like that.
Well, I don't want to make
scenario.
I agree with that. I don't want to make sort of big monolithic statements about what development looks like, or what partnership looks like, or what starting a company looks like, because there are a lot of different ways to sort of get at this, right? Yeah. Like if we're looking at really true agile development, if we're looking at true MVPs, not, you know, multi-featured, it's on Android and it's on iOS, and we've got this what we joke around the house is, you know, maximum viable product. Like that if you're just looking to test the theory, right? If you're just looking to see whether or not people are willing to buy cars online, go on Weebly, put up a thing, and see if people are willing to buy cars online. Yeah,
what's that website?
Weebly, any of them, WordPress, Weebly, like build it yourself, right? Like there are places where yes, an intern can be very, very useful just to get you off the ground. There are places where you can use free tools online to get you off the ground, and that's very useful. Is that the right thing when you want to build a scalable, indestructible, 5 nines consumer-facing product? No.
How many people here want to build a mobile app? Raise your hand. How many people want to build a website? And how many people want to build software, a web app? Okay, just to get a feel of the room.
Oh, a couple points, but one thing you made me think of is, and I'll say this for Janine, it's if you have limited resources, you maybe can't work with recruiters, but you need to have a multi-pronged strategy, like the networking, LinkedIn networking, and the one thing I just want to touch on recruiters, if you have the budget for recruiters, I meet tons of startups who, right off the bat, recruiters are bad, they're evil. How long have you been looking for your lead techie? 4 months. And they don't understand how you pay recruiters, so I won't get into that, but they'll say, well, let's say you have a budget of 80K, 100K, whatever that budget is. In about 2 months, that's the recruiter's fee. 2 months later, you're at your 4-month mark, you're at least 2 months in the hole by not even considering that avenue. So it depends on what kind of resources you have, but you should use everything to your advantage. Often it's like if meetups are very.
We're not even branding right now. We should be branding.
All about the branding with digital.
Everyone, this is Kevin Winston.
Hey everybody, how's the beach fest going?
Awesome. This guy's the founder of the Feast, right?
Yeah, with that Digital LA Silicon Beach Fest, it's all Kevin Winston.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for coming. We have an awesome. It's been awesome, hearing you all and your pitches and the panelists and all your guys' great energy. We have a bunch of parties going on tonight. I've just emailed all of you the party schedule. So there's things going on at the Standard, at the Roosevelt. The VIP parties are at a Hollywood Hills house. We're basically really utilizing the fact that we're in Hollywood and partying it up here in Hollywood. So enjoy. These guys have a great panel on how to hire a developer and find one. So I'll let them continue. So I'll see you at the parties tonight. Thank you.
I just wanted to follow up on your point. Like, there's nothing wrong with interns or like getting kids right out of school. And typical VC and angel investor wisdom is just get these guys right out of school. What I tell my clients and potential clients is, don't only do that. I'm not saying you won't succeed, but if you only get these kids from school, everything they're taught how to use a hammer and everything's a nail. Bam! They're going to build it from the ground up. They're not going to understand basic scalability. They're going to they may succeed, but probably they won't. I don't want to say they won't. So you should also work with use these senior
but
tech
how many people, seriously,
Yeah.
be honest with me. Raise your hand if you have what would you say, 50,000 plus? And that's even on the low end.
50,000 plus what?
To hire a developer,
Oh no, okay, I'll tell you this. I know
what are we
startup
looking at?
CTOs range
Yeah.
from 0, if you can get it, to 75,000 to 150,000.
Okay.
And I have 2 companies where that's true.
And Matt, what would you say to that?
It depends on what you want to do. I mean, I hate to
For mobile,
go back,
I want to build a mobile gaming app. Oh, you would
6
know
months,
this stuff. It's all you.
years,
The
right?
32 free developers.
This is I can't be more clear. A developer is worth what a developer is worth. And you've got to determine what that value is based on the application that you have. And you have to determine what that value is based on what you have and what your value of your equity is. And not not the real value, not the valuation that some VC is going to give you, but what your real value of your equity is. And the value of my equity is $1 billion. My company right now is going to be a $0 company that you'll never hear me again. You say, oh, Scott Lee, that guy's a joke. Or it's going to be $1 billion company, and there's no in between. And so I treat my company like $1 billion company. And if someone doesn't treat my company like $1 billion company, they're probably not going to work with me anyway. You're going to run into a lot of developers. If you don't, you're just not doing enough work. Your job as a CEO is to do everything possible to make sure your developers can get their work done, which means hiring your developers.
That's from the developer side.
So your developers are worth what they're worth. If a developer says, look, I've got 3 kids, I need $150,000 a year. He needs $150,000 a year, and if you can't get that, then move on.
That's the bottom line, right?
That goes back to this question about retention, right? And it might be money, it might be engagement, it might be the opportunity to work on multiple different projects, it might be we've done a lot of work around this, and it's, we have an entrepreneur in residence program for the engineers where they get to dedicate 20% of their time to a project that they're really passionate about.
I'm laughing because I believe Google really does that. I'll
No,
believe
no,
it when I see it, but I believe you do it. I'm teasing,
I mean, they get to keep the IP, which is the other interesting
That's
piece of this,
crazy,
right? No, it's totally
I know.
crazy.
Wait,
right?
you guys, what is IP? Just to make sure.
If you're, if you start if you're an Originate employee and you are starting a company within Originate, we carve out the time for you, and you're right. There are tensions within that. It's
IP
it's
is
not
who
always
owns it.
Yeah, intellectual property. It's who owns that company, and Originate gets a license to that, but it's not Originate's company. And at some point, Originate might fund you to continue to make that company. That's happened inside of Originate. We've had entrepreneurs and engineers inside of the company say, I want to do this, go through the whole process that we normally go through, that we put all of our portfolio companies through, get in front of the investment committee. The investment committee goes, yeah, actually, we're willing to put some money behind that.
So it's on alternative fundraising.
And that's I mean,
what does anybody else have a question?
But that's
I want to
retention.
make sure we address your exact questions.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm starting off, I come from a video background in Hollywood and whatnot, and I'm trying to get into the tech scene. I'm pretty savvy, but I'm running into a wall because I'm trying to build a minimum viable product. So I've taught myself HTML, CSS, a bit of JavaScript, but I'm hitting a wall, and it's just a bitch, and it's like, I don't have the money to, hire a recruiter or whatnot, or even John. I mean, I met you at Startup Engine's startup party. But, so it's like, I don't know what to do, because what I ended up finding was a guy who had a PHP script on ThemeForest and Code Canyon, and his shit was really cool. So what I did is I found a piece of this, a piece of that, and just hacked it to just build a prototype, just to get people to go, oh, check it out. But I can't get it all the way, so the question is kind of twofold. What would you do in my situation? And then second, can I maybe even trust the dude whose original PHP script I'm using and hacking all over? Or is he just going to go, oh, that's a really cool idea, and then put it in his product, and then you're just host? But if 150 grand a year, I'll take my chance with that dude for $100 an hour or something.
Yeah, so two things. One, some techies will say learn to code. I'm not really that guy. I think if you don't know how to code, it's hard to do it right. It's a 4-year degree in my mind. So I'm not saying don't do that, but it's a hard way to go. But secondarily, if you're looking for an outlet to try to get an MVP done, hackathons are very good these days for at least trying to figure something out and move it forward. He won the last one, Silicon Beach Fest.
That was unfair because we had a real team, so we weren't putting our team together. I agree with what John says. To your point, look, to this day we still hack our product together. We leverage as many open source solutions as possible, and when we're ready to the point where we can put in our own solution, we will. And you got to be very cognizant of what open source solutions you're using and how you can replace that, and are you going to retain all of your data. To the other point of, can I trust this guy? I mean, that's intuition right there. You've got to be able to trust the guy. If he's going to run away with your product, you might as well just kiss your product goodbye anyway, because everyone's going to run.
But does it matter? Because then I read, it's like, who doesn't have this idea? I bet you everyone, I
If
can bump into
you're-
5 people. So why be overprotective of something and never build it?
If you're a good enough manager, and if you've got a good enough vision, no one's going to steal your idea, because they're going to believe in you. You're not going to do any of the development yourself. To go on John's point that being a developer is a 4-year degree, it's not a 4-year degree. I've interviewed thousands and thousands of kids from schools like Michigan and Caltech and UCLA, and 4 years in, when they graduate with that CS degree, they're idiots. They can't produce any production ready
understanding, right?
Yeah, they
that's
teach
what I'm
you
getting
theory, and then you have practice. It's an 8-year degree. So yeah, go find your developer.
Scott,
Don't
give
do
us
that.
3 tips when you're hiring someone for free. How did you... No, legitimately, because people have worked for me for free as well, and I completely understand really getting to know someone's psychology and what's important to them, and usually it's not money. So what are 3 things to ask or look for that will really inspire someone to want to be a part of your team, and it has nothing to do about money?
And the weird thing is nerds get paid a lot, but money is not really their motivator.
At Riot, we have this thing called the airplane test, and it goes both ways. You have to sit down with someone. Sit down with the person that you want to work with, and you'll know this within 30 minutes. Would you take a flight to China with that person? Would you be okay with sitting next to that person for 13 hours? That person's going to annoy the shit out of you. And are you going to annoy the shit out of them? If not, no. Test number 1's done. Test number 2 is tell them about your product. Tell them about your vision. Tell them about where you want to take the company. They're either going to contribute ideas on the spot, and their eyes are going to get big, or they're not. If their eyes don't get big, move on. They're not going to be the right person for you. Test number 3, is this person smarter than you? I usually give myself about 11 or 12 brain teasers that I give out in public, and they should probably solve those brain teasers if they're going to be a developer for me. But if the guy's not smarter than you, or you don't think the guy's smarter than you, I mean, the CTO is the smartest guy in the company. He's always going to have to be, or she's always going to have to be the smartest guy in the company. If you don't feel that way, move on. You're never going to make a product.
One thing I want to bring up though is I call them false positives. Right, and partially it's like, as a business person, you're not necessarily able to evaluate the technical skills, but they sound like they know what they're doing.
Yep.
What have you seen, and how do you address that? Like, and the analogy I use is, let's say you meet someone tonight, you both get drunk, you have a great time. I'll build your site for $5,000. You give them a check for $2,500. A week later, you're like, hey, I don't know what happened to that guy. Oh, you're out $2,500. It's like, well, he's an alcoholic. He's been drinking every night. Like, I kind of made that up, but I'm sure it's true in some situations. So, so there are false positives. I don't know what you think they are.
Look, there's an old baseball adage when it comes to hiring free agents that it's better to let a guy go a year too early than a year too late. That's the same. That's the same with every line of business. If you are questioning the motivation of your developer, I mean, look, you're going to hire people and they're not always going to work out. They just aren't. People get fired all the time. People part ways all the time. But if you're questioning the work and you're really questioning your gut, says this isn't working, this guy's lying to me, this guy's speaking over my head and I don't understand, that's because they're bullshitting you.
Yeah, but so it goes back to gut again, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, so I'm not a technical person. I just hired a developer, and I need to trust this person. They just left, and I don't know how to access anything. I don't have my password. My site's hacked for all I know. How do I protect myself against stuff like this if I'm just not a technical person?
There's plenty of resources online for that. You gotta do a good job with your own documentation. We use Dropbox. We use GitHub. We use an open source documentation website called PBWorks, and document everything you can. And if your developer doesn't want to document everything they can, then they don't want to scale the company with you anyway.
And what's document mean to you? Document everything.
So here's how I do it, and I roll this out at every company I work with. It's a 3-tier system. The first tier is product management. It's primarily for the business people. It's usually a program like Trello or Pivotal Tracker. It's very akin to what's going on in the Agile community, but basically you have cards, you move them around on the screen, super easy. Business people love it, and it gets them engaged into the business again.
I love Trello.
The second tier is project management. That's what we had in the 90s up midway through the 2000s. It's your bug trackers, it's your, once you know we're going to do Facebook Connect, here's all the tasks. Formerly the tasks were like this, now it's just one line. And so the project management system is responsible for what features are we doing if there's bugs, roping that back in. That's predominantly developers. It needs to be transparent to the business side. Sometimes they even get in it with permission. And then the third tier is what I call institutionalized knowledge, intranet knowledge base. It's where your specs go. It's where onboarding, like processes, onboarding clients, onboarding developers. The way I like to say it is I don't want to have to think. So if it's ever something important to the business, it's written down. So I don't have to think about it. I can look it up. Or if we hire someone, I just give it to them. So those 3 systems, and I like to do Trello and Fuddle, Google Sites, but it's basically Trello or Pivotal, Basecamp or on Fuddle, or a Wiki or Google Sites, or you can do Dropbox, but I found real quickly you have to get out of that fast.
Yeah, and real quick, if anybody has a question about what those tools were, where can they contact you?
FreelanceCTO.com, John at FreelanceCTO.
And I want to ask Janine, if someone can't afford to hire someone full time, then what do you suggest? How do they find the right person to staff for their company?
You said how if they can't afford it,
they
or
can.
they can't afford it.
If they can.
Well, obviously, it's all network. So whether it's yours or mine, that's the way to do it. It's always asking people. So especially if you have limited funds. Let's say you have some money, we don't have a ton of it. And you can't necessarily use an agency, hit up your people. Just like people were saying, talk to everybody. Somebody will know somebody. There's also a lot of sites that are either free or very inexpensive that you can try. They're not phenomenal, but they're places you can try, especially if you don't have friends that are CTOs.
But if they come to your company, how do you help solve their problem?
So, we basically are really, that's what we do. We find technical people. That's what our job is. So we're really, really good at it. We've got huge networks. We've been doing this forever. So it's just sort of you're tapping into my 5,000 people that I know instead of the 5,000 people you don't know. So that's the advantage, and we're also very, very picky. So we tend to, send 1 or 2 people. We're really particular about who we send, and as much as possible, we vet them out. So
And what are you looking at cost-wise to hire someone if they went through you?
The salary or the fee?
Salary, both.
Well, the salaries, really varies. We were talking earlier about the salaries for technologists and CTOs. So, we see everything, every kind of technology, every level. And
is there a difference between a mobile development or software development or website development?
Yes.
Yeah, there's a difference, sure. But,
no, a difference in salary.
Yes.
Yeah. There's a difference in salary. I would say, the mobile developers.
iPhone guys are ridiculous.
They're very expensive. They're mostly contractors, so they're usually making, they are making directly to them $100 to $150 an hour to them. So if you're going through an agency, it's gonna be more. And they will only work telecommute 95% of the time. They won't go on site.
And a lot of the contractors for iPhone specifically have been hired full time because they were so hard to get. People they built up so much iPhone payments.
Yeah.
They could pay the guys that they just. I actually had 2 startups. You know them, so I won't mention them. One had an iPhone guy on contract, just part time. Loaned him to the second startup. The second startup offered him a full time job. First startup's no longer has the iPhone guy, and it almost broke the friendship.
I mean, that leads to my next question, but I still want you to answer the difference in salary between the 3. But do you recommend hiring on contract or full time?
It really depends. It depends on the situation. A lot of times what I don't recommend, I can tell you this, I do not recommend contract to hire. The reason being, which a lot of people like, they like that whole try before you buy thing. The reason I don't recommend it, especially for startups, is if they're a contractor, they're a contractor, and they want to be a contractor. And if there's really a reason, like they're about to have a baby, that's one thing. But generally speaking, contractors like to contract. And if they're a permanent person and they're good, they are working. Period. Right now. So
let's bring it back to the difference between mobile software and
mobile. So if it's a perm person, you luck out. You might be able to get one for $140.
Okay.
Maybe.
And a
then
website.
all the developers. Yeah. Okay, so open sourcers, which is like Python, PHP, Ruby. Well, I was gonna say Perl, but not really, because nobody uses it. For a really good person like a tech lead, somebody that can actually architect and code, 125 to 175.
That's a good range.
And then, there's definitely people that still use Java, I know, but not all. And there's still people that use C#. It really depends. A lot of times it's whatever the CTO is used to. So, maybe same thing, they're not a lot cheaper, maybe 120 to 140.
But PHP guys are cheap.
No,
I want
they're
one of those.
not. No, yeah.
And I guess the other thing to understand with anything in business is that everybody brings their different experience to the table, and there are a lot of different opinions about different things. And I think one of the most important things to take away from any business panel is that anything is possible. You have to create your own story.
Yeah.
And one of the things I want to start talking about is outsourcing, because a lot of us think about how about outsourcing development to the Ukraine or India or the Philippines. But before we talk about that, who has a question in the room? Because I want to make sure we get all your questions.
I have a question for you. So when there's a process that you said you started with 30 people, basically. At some point you had to hire some of them, right?
Yes.
So was that first weekend or whatever first week like a vetting process for you, so that you realized, okay, these people I can contract?
The whole thing was a vetting process for me. And at first we started. Look, it wasn't easy. My first 6 months starting this business is myself in a room. And I did nothing, and nothing got done. And then you start bringing on developing, start bringing another developer, start bringing another developer. 32 starts becoming certain people full time. And you bring on the people full time because they add real value to the company.
And how do you afford those people? Do you have funding? Is your company making money?
He wants.
I still don't pay that.
Okay.
We run a very tight ship in terms of money. People come on because they're passionate about your project, and you see that in the work. If someone's working part-time and they say that they're working 40 hours for you and it looks like 30 minutes of work, it's 30 minutes worth of work. So you bring on the people that have value and the people who are buying into the process. In 32, it eventually becomes 3 full-time, 4 full-time, 10 full-time, 15 full-time. And then your 32 goes away too.
That's after already they've been working for you for some time.
Yeah, but there's no, look, I mean, certain people, like a standard contract to hire is 3 months, right? And that 3 months really gives you a good understanding of how someone's work. But sometimes it's a lot less than 3 months, and sometimes it's a lot more. And you have to know your own product, you have to know your own company, and what works within that company, and how people interact with each other, and how people are buying into the product.
I will say something about sort of this idea that, you've got no money and you want to hire developers, right? Like that's the premise with which we started, right?
Or you have no technical knowledge and you want to hire a developer, yeah.
Those conditions are not necessarily permanent, right? And they shouldn't be, right? Like there isn't a, we have to keep these guys for a nickel or trick them or do all these kinds of things forever, right? Like ideally, you build a company that gets value, you go get some money, right? Like one of the things that we do is work very, very closely with VCs in the area. We know a lot of VCs, and we know a lot of the angels, we know a lot of the accelerators and things like that to get you a little bit of money to hire your developers, right? At a certain point, you're going to have to pay them. They're not just working with you, but they're passionate about the project, they're excited about the project, but they're also excited about either salary or, in most cases, a huge payday coming on the backside from equity, right? And so this question of how do we hire them at zero is one piece of it. But then the next question is, how do we then go raise money? And this goes back to this question of documentation. The more documentation you have, not only does it protect you, but it actually sets you up very well when you want to go sell the company. It helps you to go get a better valuation. It helps you to have the due diligence piece of this cannot be understated. When you want to go raise money from a legitimate institutional investor or from Tech Coast Angels or from whomever, they're going to want to see sort of the path that you use to get there. And in a lot of cases, they don't care whether or not it came from a Ukrainian shop, or if they came from two interns that got together, or 50 guys, or the most expensive team ever. They want to see sort of the traction around the product. They want to see sort of the code itself. They want to see that it's scalable, and then you can go raise money. If you're doing things the right way, you will put yourself in a good position to be able to take that next step. And whether that next step is we turn this from this thing that's happening in my my mother's basement to like a customer-facing scalable product, or we take those steps that are sort of the classic steps, right? We go get the Series A, then we build it out a little more, then we go get B, and then we scale it out a little more, right? Like, sorry, no. I think that this whole how do we hire an engineer happens alongside of this other sort of path that any entrepreneurial endeavor takes, which is how do we grow this company? How do we grow this idea in a sustainable way? And thinking about how we're raising money alongside, or thinking about how we're making money ideally alongside how we're hiring these engineers has to be not just at the back of your mind, that has to be right there the whole time. And the engineers help you with that. And if you're very thoughtful about working with your engineer, documenting your engineer's work, and documenting the progress of the product, it makes it much easier to move forward with customers. It makes it much easier to move forward with institutional investors or with anyone else.
The topic of this panel is how to find and hire developers. So who here feels right now, with what we've discussed so far, that they know a little bit more about how to find a developer? Please raise your hand. Okay, that's not enough. Right?
Can I give some tactical ideas? Okay.
Yes.
There's a few things. One, I want to say, from what I've heard from, correct me if you feel differently, but from what I've heard from all my CEO startup people, is that they can't get funding and they can't get accepted to an accelerator or an incubator without their CTO. So it's chicken egg. Can't get the CTO, you can't get the money from them until you get your CTO, whatever, which is why some people hire CTOs.
Go get entertainment money.
Yeah, that's true. That's a possibility.
A lot of my clients do that.
Right. So that's one issue to be aware of, if you're starting a company, is that you sometimes can't necessarily get that backing and that training until you have the CTO. And in terms of like really, if you, let's say you don't have the network, you have no idea where to go for tech, there are some places you can try that are either really free or really cheap to find people. So one, startuply.com.
Are you guys writing this down? Startuply.com?
I've never gotten great people from it, but I've gotten a couple of good people. So this is not necessarily like you're going to put a posting out there and get 50 phenomenal resumes. You might get one, maybe. So that's one. It's free. Another thing you can do, which people think I'm crazy, but it actually works. Okay, so SoCal Tech, I assume everybody in this room probably gets their newsletter. If you join it, not get the free newsletter, but if you actually join it and you become an access member to the database, you can post jobs for free. Nobody goes there to look for jobs, but everybody gets that newsletter, and there's only like 5 or 6 of them a day. So people will see it, and it's only $20 a month to join, so that's really, really inexpensive. Other things, if you post on eBay classifieds, there's a job section. It is pulled into the Indeed aggregator, which is, every time we meet a candidate, we're like, how do you know what you're looking for? If you're looking for a job, what do you use to look for it? 99% of them say Indeed. So it's a free way to get those into their little, search results every day. And there's also a couple others, like their startup hire.
What about Craigslist? I've had super awesome luck on Craigslist.
Some people have. It's kind of a hit or miss thing.
But
you have to go through 100 people for every good one.
I did get murdered once.
If I'm not
it was just once.
If you're not technical,
if I
know if they're any good.
No, how do you even know what job description to write? But it's really important
Yeah.
it's really important that all you guys know. I want you to, but I passionately care about your success. I would not spend my time here. It's an hour of my time with these amazing people if I didn't care about you finding a developer and being able to hire a developer. So if you have a question, or if you didn't raise your hand and feel like something's not getting answered, I want you to ask her. I'm going to be pissed off. So like, so
scary.
We know it's hard.
You know what?
Yeah. So go
Seriously,
ahead.
anyone in this room, send me an email if you want my information somewhere. I don't know on the site.
So how would you write the job description?
How would I write it, or how? Okay,
Yeah.
how would they write it, or how would I write it?
Either, yeah.
Okay, how you guys would write it if you have no clue is either email me and I can help you, or
And how do they get in touch with you?
it's jdavis@fetchrecruiting.com. And we have a table downstairs too if you want to get our card. Plus we're giving away a mini. Okay, anyway. But look at go on wherever, go on Indeed and do a job search for the job you're hiring for, and you'll get examples, and you just use one of them.
The only downside is, like, if you haven't built anything yet, people ask me all the time, what's the best language? What's the like? There isn't one.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
So
it's true.
the only downside to that is that you can't really. I don't think you should put in like specific tech skills like Java or C#. It's a more generic.
Right. And that's why
and if you don't know what you're doing, you have no business choosing a tech platform.
Well, some of this goes back to this airplane test, right? Like you have to, starting a company is hard, right? Like it's just hard, and you're going to have to, cobble stuff together and hack things together and just kludge it to death like repeatedly in every aspect of it, whether it's the engineering piece of it or it's the business plan or it's there's going to be a million times that you have to pivot. There's going to be a million times where you have to take a big risk. There's going to be a lot of things that you have to do to make the thing work. Engineering is one aspect of that.
Right. What's your question?
But the same
about?
attitude that gets you to be successful there is going to be the one that gets you successful all across the board. Turns out a super duper passionate guy is able to recruit engineers. A super duper passionate guy is able to raise money. A super duper passionate guy is able to sell, right? Like that's going to be central to everything that you do as an entrepreneur, no matter what aspect you're looking at, right? People that are willing to find creative solutions are going to be people that are willing to find creative solutions in business. They're going to be people that are willing to find creative solutions in their code. They're going to be people that are willing to have the creative solutions that are the genesis of the business in the first place. Like that's the kind of person you have to be to start a company. And if you're not that kind of person, it's really hard to be an entrepreneur. There's other jobs.
What's your question about?
So I've been considering the idea of, there are some things like PhoneGap that build HTML5 and send it to mobile. If I want to just iterate fast on a concept and see if it feels right in somebody's hand, and I don't really care about it working or being able to scale until I can do that, could I find like a front-end person? Is that enough? Or do I need somebody who has more?
Fast Start Studio, it's an accelerator in Orange County. They're putting on what's called Prototype Day, which is different than like a hackathon or startup weekend. They don't care if it works in the end, but your mock-up or your prototype should work. So check out Prototype Day through Fast Start Studio. It's all about and I can't remember the tools, but there's all kinds of tools you can use to mock up your stuff online and make it feel like it works when it actually doesn't. There are a bunch of those now, and even little things like Balsamic, which is just a program. It's just, you could think of it as an art program, but the templates are like iPhone button and iPad, and so it's really easy to mock things up that look, I call them high fidelity prototypes, but they look as close as you can get it to the real thing without being a graphic designer or a computer guy. So there's tons of these things out there now, and Prototype Day might be a really good way to jumpstart that for you.
Did you have another question in the back? I saw a hand was raised.
Yeah, in front.
I was just going to say, if developers don't want money and if you can be super passionate to hire them, what are some of the things you think developers like to hear?
Challenges, nerdy challenges.
Look, that's different for every single developer. I'll tell you one story, and hopefully this story is helpful. So, finding a developer or finding a partner takes more due diligence than finding your wife. And if you take a look at the numbers, how are most people finding their significant others today?
Bars.
Probably on things like, no, not at bars.
Not married.
Probably eHarmony.
Just want to be clear. Not married.
Probably eHarmony. Me?
You are.
I'm getting married in December 28th.
Oh, congratulations! That's fantastic.
Probably eHarmony or JDate or Match.com. they're not going on the classifieds anymore because they don't work. Classifieds are like Craigslist. You know, they find social sites that really match people together. One of the best dating sites in the world is World of Warcraft because people have a very similar interest and they meet. You joke, but it's true. That's not what there's a site out there that is very, very popular and has millions of developers on it. It's called GitHub, github.com. And I behoove all of you to actually learn a little about your product and learn a little bit about the underlying technology so that you understand how to use GitHub. But once you do, you have access to thousands and thousands of repositories. And those repositories, a repository is what a coder brings their code to, so it compiles. And you can look at these repositories and you can see people's ideas, and you can connect with these people. And the people who have the similar ideas with you, and people who are facing similar challenges, you'll know what motivates them. You'll know who they are, and that's how you can find a really good developer because you've already seen their code. You know their code.
It's a little harder to get in there, but
David, do you have a question?
I do. I talked to a guy I know who's a developer. He posted on Facebook something about he was trying to find someone to hire all his friends on a team, and I was like, how are you going to find someone to hire all of your at once?
That's an acqui-hire. If your company's failing, you get acquired for your engineers, and it's $1 million ahead.
Yeah, so
not kidding.
So I was talking to him about helping him with what I'm working on, and I told him the basics of what I'm working on, and he wanted to know all of a sudden all the details, and it kind of made me uncomfortable because I'm friends with him, but not really good friends with him. Number one, and he's got all this capability to do this himself, so I kind of freaked out. I didn't want to tell him too much, and then at the same time. Then he said, well, and he got mad, and he's like, well, if you're not going to tell me anything, then forget about it. And then he was like, and then he said, he's like, honestly, if anyone's going to spend their own free time to do anything, it's going to be their own idea. He's like, no offense.
Pretty much.
But that's so that really was like a huge sock in the gut. I was just like, wow.
So like I meet people who like, I don't want to tell you my idea, sign my NDA. I'm walking away. I mean, I hear so many things. I've built so many of them. It's like, it's a contact manager. Well, that's been, 94, 99, 2005. Like, what's NDA-able about that? So, people who do not tell you their ideas, I just walk away. There's nothing, they're bullshit. I strongly recommend telling as many people as possible what your idea is. You'll get more feedback, you'll get more excited. If you're excited, why don't you tell people about it? And quite frankly, if anyone's going to steal it, I want them to steal it. Because if you're partnering with me, we will destroy that other company. So maybe that's a unique situation for me, but your competitor gets funding, what does that mean?
You have a good idea.
Validated our business model. Like there's ways to spin it, So
is there anyone on the panel that agrees that you shouldn't share your ideas because a developer could take them and build them themselves?
No, we don't do NDAs either. I think
no one funds you or works with you because of your idea. Everyone in this room, your idea is worthless. They work with you because of how you track record.
What other questions do we have? Okay, right here.
You've mentioned hackathons a couple times. Shouldn't you know this? But we're putting on one at Amplify next weekend. What's the best way to find people for hackathons? Is it?
Which kind of people?
Developers.
Yeah. If you want developers to attend the hackathons, you post in all the developer meetup groups pretty much.
It's
pretty easy.
Yes.
And
what are the developer meetup groups?
The big ones are LA PHP is huge.
Okay. You guys write this down because you could find developers for your companies though too.
But the generic, it's all the languages have.
So there's for Python, there's SoCal Pickies or SoCal Python on Meetup. There's
Can you say it a little louder?
Yeah. SoCal Python. There's LA Django. There's also LA Hackathons, which is non-denominational.
Yeah.
There's.
I would not go to the CMS meetups. WordPress, Drupal, Joomla. It's a bunch of like second-rate. I hope they're not here, amateur. They're not gonna. They may help you get over one hump, but not more than that.
Before you do it, before you send out the email or put it on the message board, please email the organizers of the group and say, hey, I'm going to do this. Is this okay? And 99% of the time, like, oh yeah, sure, absolutely.
Sometimes they'll help promote it, which is even, if you can meet the organizer of the meetup, that's even better.
And there was a question right behind you.
One more thing I'd add to that. Include the UX community so that they're well designed.
And by the way, this is Crystal Ehrlich. She runs the first or second largest user experience meetup in the United States. It's in LA. And so if you need product or UX help, she has the list.
And also Adam Bell's in the back with the Adobe group.
Flash and
And actually that stuff ends up being super duper important. I think that's the next big bottleneck. I mean, engineering, gigantic bottleneck, but design is a monster.
But let's stick to finding. But I want to make sure we get answered. David, you said you had.
Yeah, the second part of the thing that I was talking about. I understand the idea sharing part. What is the issue? What's the solution to? I mean, I just get the feeling that most developers are not going to want to work on something, obviously just for equity. They want to have some kind of.
I think if they're about 27 or 28, they have 2 or 3 companies behind them.
Sorry, let me clarify. I mean, as a partner to develop, as a founder.
Yeah. So here's what I'm saying.
That's the way that I've been looking at it.
Between like 22 and 28, they're all cool with working on other people's stuff. But as they have 2 or 3 companies under their belt, successful or not, they get, especially if they're not successful, like I can do better, I'll partner with my buddy, I'll do better. So, getting over 30, they become expensive. They're probably a lot better, but, this maybe part-time or not. But there is a certain growth curve where the techies will, in my strong opinion, will eventually, they do want to do their own thing. So the trick is, like, let's say you're way into, you want to revolutionise fantasy football or something like that. You got to find a nerd that loves fantasy football then.
Otherwise, No, I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm totally with you. I would say that that's another good way to vet your idea, right? Like, if you can't find any developers that want to work on your idea,
maybe it's not a good idea.
Maybe you should rethink your idea, right? Like, you've got 32 developers that are willing to work for free. That's not just because you're handsome, right? Like, it's a little bit because he's handsome, but like, it's because they're fired up about working with you, A, and they're fired up about working on the idea, B, right? Like, I know that ideas come second to teams, but if it's a cool idea, you can motivate people. Like, we've worked on some projects that we were super proud of that, we were doing it for, a veterans community, or we were doing it to, build hospitals in Rwanda, or we were doing it to sell comic books, right? Like, find something that the people that you're, engaged with are really passionate about, right? And it's easier to find, people that are going to be passionate about it with you.
I just want to take a new question because... I'll get to you in a second. What's your question about?
I wanted to backtrack to the matchmaking analogy that was made. I don't know if it wasn't, I don't know why it wasn't mentioned, but cofounderslabs.com. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes, I get a lot of requests from there.
Do you think it's like a reputable site to use? I mean,
it's new, so it's hard to say.
That's what I thought.
I would use it and see what happens. The problem I encounter is most of these, they're out of state or out of country. And it's just pretty much not going to work.
There's another new one called Equity Lancer. So one of these guys interrupted me. I didn't finish my list.
Sorry.
But,
go for it.
Well, that's it. It's Equity Lancer. I have no idea if it's any good. It's new, and it was interesting. I was talking to the guy that was founding it, and they are out of state. They're in Chicago.
Yeah.
It's like, well, the issue is really going to be finding companies that want to give away equity. I'm like, no,
nope.
Not going to be.
That is not an issue. If I don't have equity, I'll make it up to give to you.
Move on to the next panel. Everybody, I really want to get your questions answered. My email is espree@espreedevora.com. If you feel like you didn't understand how to find a developer or how to hire one, I want you to email me so I can be sure that you get your questions answered. That's espree@espreedevora.com. And I'm not kidding. I will be pissed if you leave here and you feel like you left with nothing.
It's still not easy, though. I will say it's not easy. Don't think it's that.